All right, welcome to episode 13 with another podcast that I'm surprised got past like 5.
Episode 13 of 500.
Yeah, we're cranking.
And I've mentioned this, and I don't know if I've mentioned it on this podcast or one of the other dozen unsuccessful podcasts we do. But if you're thinking about starting your own podcast, and I got this advice from a great event announcer, Steve Fleck, just push the button. Just do it. And then that's how you start a podcast, is you just do it. And you know what? Unbeknownst to our lovely customers believe, you don't need video.
True that.
What?
You don't need video. You can just record sound if you want.
Now, was it also him who said, no, I think it was a football coach. You can put it off, but you'll just be a year older when you finally do it?
Yeah.
Or Miller. Thank you. That's what it was.
And that's true. And well, anyway, that's probably not what people tuned in to get a pep talk about starting your old podcast. If everybody out there starts a podcast, ours won't be the worst.
There you go. I like that. Yeah. That's the goal. If everyone starts a podcast, ours will no longer be the worst.
Well, this is kind of cool that this is our first 500 Cats episode with this particular group of people in one room.
Yeah, and Ryan High, who's part of the 500 Cats podcast, is in the room also, but working.
He can't loop on the mic if you need me.
So, and he's working, but we wanted to recap a huge week of events. Obviously, 500 Cats is about nothing, but if anything, it's about events, and event production and stuff. And we had 3 events last week, which is a good number for a week. I mean, for an event company, you got to stay busy, so you got to have more than one event. And we had CSRA, we had the concert, and we had IRONMAN Arizona, and you guys popped off a couple podcasts about IRONMAN Arizona. So Dylan, let's start about CSRA. What does that even stand for? Construction
Safety Research Alliance. So they are, as my understanding, a sub-college of CU Boulder, and they're not teaching construction. It is a research alliance. They do scientific research and peer-reviewed studies of how to make the construction industry safer. Hopefully I didn't butcher all that, but that's my understanding. They are a part of CU Boulder, like I said, so they do an annual event, I believe, to essentially have a summit, a recap of their entire year of what they've learned and what's new and what's coming in the future. And we do the AV for this event, providing all audio, visual projectors, live streaming, all at Folsom Field, which is probably the key exciting fact of that event for us, the football field for the CU Buffs.
Yeah, specifically in the Byron White Center. And if you don't know who Byron White is, he was not only a football player for the University of Colorado, but then became a Supreme Court justice. So their fancy club seats area is called the Byron White Center, or Byron White area of the stadium.
I like how you made eye contact with me, like I was going to be like,
I can see
yes.
there's a bust of him in a sign. I can see that. But CSRA was a good customer, first of all. Like they know what they want, and it's their big thing of the year. Like we went through Ironman's big thing of the year is Kona. This is kind of their big thing of the year.
Exactly.
Is this conference. And it's corporate AV, like a little bit on steroids, from the standpoint that we do a live broadcast, but it's a multicam production, and then the multicam production stops, and then we switch to a broadcast in an entirely different room that's like a studio broadcast where they do live online Q&A with the people that were watching online, and they had about the same amount of people online as they did in the seats. So crazy successful for them, because I know last year, this is our second year doing it, it was about a third of the people online that were there in the seats, and now it's pretty much evenly a hybrid conference. But they have some pretty high-tech big requests doing 2 broadcasts at once.
Yeah, it was definitely a classic situation where they came to us and found us on Google and came to us with this crazy idea that they're like, we want to pretend that we're broadcasters because we're on the, the suite level of Folsom Field and do this like extra Q&A session for the online people who are just sitting there waiting. We're like, that sounds awesome. We'll figure it out. And it's technically pretty complicated.
Yeah,
But
we have to use our live view packs and everything. It's no different than a full-blown TV production, so we have to break out all the stops.
One of the coolest things, though, because we were I was in the studio for that, was it was global. Like there were literally people all over the world who wanted to see what the results of the research for the year was. And I mean, there were more. I actually think there were more people online than were physically there, and they were like, "Hi from Australia." Hi, it was literally a global production for something that I would not have thought of as being that.
And they participated too. Like they would be posting during the sessions, questions for the presenters, and then immediately following, the presenters would sit down in the broadcast booth and talk to them, quote unquote, face to face, which is, I think, an awesome idea.
Yeah. Overall, super smooth. We had some audio transmission issues where there's just a lot of noise. So then we had to use a feature we did this in our main studio here in Boulder. They were at the University of Colorado. Me and Melinda were at the main studio. We had to turn on what's called voice isolation, which then makes it kind of sound weird. And whenever you got to turn on voice isolation, you're kind of giving up. But it worked. And then we found out, and Marcus doesn't even know this story, we found out all that noise was only coming in over NDI.
Really?
And we had the patch panel issue, which we'll talk about later. So we had to resolve the patch panel issue and switch back to cabled connections. And we're talking about connections here in our studio, whether we're using everything over the network or we're actually physically using like cable TV cables. And for some reason, the cable TV cables did not have that extra noise where the NDI did.
Interesting.
But we didn't figure that out. Like I finally was like, Dylan, I can't do this anymore. You got to figure this out. And then I don't know how we figured it out, but we
had better public speakers.
Yeah. And, one of the things, it's hard for a sound person is you tell people to speak into the mic like I am right now, and they stand 3 feet back from the mic and they look over to the side. And then they always, when they do that, they do this. Can you guys hear me? And so they're speaking over to the side, tap. And they go, "Can you hear me?" And of course the people can't. So then people say no. So then instead of stepping up to the microphone, they look and glare at Dylan. So we struggled a little bit. If you are doing some kind of corporate event, a great piece of advice is whether you point them to a video on the internet or have a pre-event connection, like a pre-con meeting of some kind, and just talk about mic control. I know like it's a funny term that like Sublime used to use, and they're talking about like rapping and stuff, or how they carry the mic and how they sing into the mic. But it's a true statement. You got to have mic control. You got to just talk into the microphone.
It's meant to be talked into.
And it brings your conference down when you don't. 2 things: talk into the mic and don't yell into the mic. Mm-hmm. And so we run into those problems. And I felt for you remotely that I just saw, and I could just see, because I could hear the room noise. Oh, and also they would start a new session. And as every corporate conference, it takes a while for people to stop talking from the intermission.
Yep.
And I could hear all that remotely.
I'll admit we probably didn't use the best microphone for the situation, but it is the most popular microphone ever made, which is the SM58. And like I said, those are designed for high-level concerts, singers touching the mic, so they like roll off the low end when you're so close to it so that it sounds natural. And then in AV, corporate AV, people tend to stand, I mean, in our case, it was 4 feet away.
That's not the right mic for corporate AV.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the right mic for everything.
What's the right mic for corporate AV?
And I wish I had the model, because I said, "Hey, Dylan, when you're out the warehouse, I have this mic that has 3 different grills."
The gold one?
It's a Heil.
Yeah.
And it's amazing for public speaking because it just, I don't know. Dylan's our real only engineer on sound. It just works better. So I was like, grab that. And then when he got here, I was like, where is it? And he's like, I think I left it at the warehouse. And we had 3 events. It was in a tote for event 2 when it should have been in a tote for event 1, even though I asked for it for event 2.
Yeah.
Because I was like, we had a concert, we'll talk about that in a minute. I was like, if they pop up an instrument somewhere that I'm not ready for, this mic will do everything.
The funny thing is it's originally in event 1 because it's our talkback mic for that mixer.
It's originally was in the right box. And I said, pull it out and give it to me. And then he's like, I don't know what happened to it. And then it was during day 2, I found it and I was like, here it is.
But can I ask you guys, at all of the events that we do where people stand, 3 feet back from the microphone, I don't understand how people don't know to be on the microphone. Like, what event do you see?
It's a lack of trust is what it is.
And then they back away. Like
Yeah.
it starts getting feedback and then they back away and then it's worse. And then they keep backing away from the mic and then you have to keep gaining it up and it's worse and worse. Just talk into the microphone.
Yeah, and people, we kind of talked about this on this podcast when we're having guests who have never touched a microphone before, and we say, hey, come sit down and talk in this microphone. We're finding it's really easy when there's no headphones, there's no loud PA, and it's just like an intimate setting, and they put it against their mouth and like, okay, I can hold it here. But as soon as people hear their own voice echoing in a room at themselves, they get nervous, and they start backing away like this, and then all of a sudden you're hearing all the room. You can't hear anything.
Yeah.
And then if you're ever wondering, the sound guy then is going the level up, and then they're turning the gain up, and then you hear feedback. Well, it's because you're not talking into the microphone, or you're walking in front of the microphone or the speakers with your microphone, which also happened at your event at CSRA.
Yeah, I got the whole
that one
collection
woman kept walking in front of the microphone and it would feed back or
front of
the
speakers,
speaker.
yeah.
And I was like, what? Stop doing that.
Yeah.
I will give Dylan credit. I work a lot in the studio, and it's typically another company sending me my signal. It's another company sending me the audio, and we have to do what we call like remix because they're not doing a great job of mixing. But Dylan did a great job of mixing, and a friend came by the studio, and I talked to him for like 45 minutes, and I just had to hear that it didn't stop, so I didn't have to pay that close attention. So that was nice to have somebody on the other end that was
actually mixing.
Because, one person comes up and is loud, one person's quiet, one person's low, one person's high, and having somebody address that on site saves a lot of trouble.
Knock Dylan down a peg, though. in Kona, most of the time in Kona, whenever I came to yours, it was obviously always mixed. But there was one time, and it was off of, like, they had been sitting there for a long time, and I think new people had put on the headset, and I honestly think Greg grabbed someone. I feel like Greg had to have grabbed someone else's headset because he came in so hot and there were children in the studio, but I had my headphones in and I didn't remember there were children, and he came in so hot that I just shouted the F word in the middle of the studio.
Live.
But I
what
believe that the
happens.
parents of those children said, it's not the first time they've heard it. It's fine.
And they were off doing something else. They didn't hear me, thankfully.
So that event was you and Lane and Ryan High, and it went good. The customer was happy.
Yeah.
The one negative takeaway is for the second year in a row, the customer said, you guys don't charge enough. And we think we do. We met our profit margin. From our standards, it was a successful event. But when a customer's like, you don't charge enough, it's tough because we try to, we're always working towards sustainable relationships. And so we know when somebody calls us and they're like, our AV company dumped us and the event's tomorrow, we know we could charge them anything, but we also know that's going to be a 1-year deal. And it's much easier to keep customers year in and year out and fill up your schedule with repeat customers than first-time events and stuff. So...
Well, and yours and my goal from the beginning of this company has been we build relationships with our customers that we not only do we have repeat business, but they're people that we enjoy being around. Like, we don't want to have people that are customers who are cranky or rude or mean or whatever. We want to have friendships with our customers. We want to build relationships. We want this to be I mean, like with Ironman, it's been 20 years, and there's a reason for that.
And they're a good customer, but I hate hearing that. I mean, because I don't want to change the way we do business. I don't want to let's see how much we can make. But if I can give everybody a piece of advice, the way we do it is the wrong way to do it. If you're in business and trying to make money, I don't know. I think the way we do it's worked well for us, but it probably doesn't work for everybody.
Can I just chime in here with a fun fact about CSRA specifically? I don't know if you remember this, Dylan, but last year we found out that what we charged to live stream the whole event, put everything on, run the second room, was less than the flowers that were provided for the tables.
Yeah, and I think I heard we came in under the photographer this year.
Mm-hmm.
So don't call us because of that. So that was a good, successful event, very high tech. You know, one of the best parts about any event is when it's either over or almost over and the customer says, put us on the books for next year. And then it sounds like somebody there gave our number out to somebody else who's doing an event at the stadium. And like, I'll be honest, if you're a Colorado fan or you grew up in Boulder, working at the stadium is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
it was definitely a distraction over the entire 2-day event. They were painting the field before the Buffs and Utah game. And man, I've never watched a football field get painted from like start to finish over 2 days. But it was exciting. It was so interesting.
I love that you were sending pictures like, oh, guy overshot. He overshot one of the letters.
You had to go
it
fix
was distracting. You're going to have to fix that for sure.
I have like 3 times more photos than what I sent you guys because I figured you got tired of it.
And then what a great game on Saturday. The Buffs
game.
Looked like the team that I think everybody hoped they would turn into, but we had to cut it short Saturday. Actually, so let's go back to Thursday. So then that's CSRA, unless anybody has anything to add to that.
The only I do have one question, because we kind of talked a little bit about like, oh, there's 2 live streams going on in different rooms, and they were talking online, but it's a little more. What exactly were you streaming? Because there was like a conference that got streamed online. The second room that wasn't online, it was going to additional rooms. Is that right?
Kind of opposite. It was the other secondary room was exclusively online. There was no audience in that room. So the point of it was it's like a normal 1 or 2 day AV conference. And then throughout the day, they schedule in 20-minute, 1 hour breaks for lunch. And so they knew they wanted this hybrid model where they had people on-prem and people virtual, but they didn't want to lose the people during lunch.
Right.
And so it was important that, you know, through the whole day, even though there's like 4 or 5 sessions, it wasn't like 4 or 5 events that people had to click to another website, click to another video, reload a new page. That they could just leave their browser open and have it on their coffee table all day. And so that's where it kind of got complicated, in that they didn't want even though there was nothing happening in the general session room during lunch, they still wanted programming for the virtual people.
And that's why it needed to come through the studio.
That's why it came through the studio, because it was one giant live stream that we switched from the session room to the Q&A room, and it didn't have to reload a new event.
Cool.
But I thought one of the things that was interesting is that Q&A room. So it was people who did the speaking downstairs would come up and like answer questions for the remote audience, and they could type into the chat their questions, and they would get feedback from whatever that general session room topic was. They got one-on-one ability to ask questions. And I think it was day 2, Dylan, that you added, so there was always a chat, but you added a Q&A feature live during the broadcast, because they were like, we want to be able to upvote things and have people ask questions and then have the audience pick the questions that would get answered.
Yeah.
So literally, the person in the general session room said, and now we're going to be able to do upvoting. And everybody in the chat's like, well, where is this? There's no upvoting. I can't. And then all of a sudden it pops up this Q&A, bong. And one of the people were like, that wasn't there. I didn't miss it, did I? Like, how did that? And so Dylan actually added that feature live during the show so that people could upvote questions. So during the Q&A portion, the most important questions got answered, and because I don't know that they got to all of them.
That's cool. So yeah, so it was the same people that did the general session that then went and answered questions regarding their general session.
Not exclusively as a
time.
hard rule, but pretty much yes.
Okay. That's awesome.
Sometimes like a higher up person might have answered the questions on behalf or something, but
it was regarding whatever you just heard in the general session.
Yeah, because they definitely took, and this kind of segues me into the last thing I wanted to talk about. The on-prem people had a chance to have 15 minutes of Q&A.
Okay.
And then it was like, well, we don't want to rob the virtual audience of that opportunity either. So then they did that.
Awesome.
So
that's a good solution.
This is kind of a
we're not going to talk about the cat's
do
box.
it.
Yeah,
yes,
we have
do
to.
it. Do it. I was like, we have to talk about that.
I was going to say this is a debated topic amongst our team, and I'm sure it is out of our team too. But they came to us with a new idea this year of using what's called a catch box. And at first I was like, it's just a gimmick. So what it is you put in, it is a microphone. There's a microphone that comes in this little foam box, and you put in like a wireless transmitting body pack inside of it, and it gets strapped in nice and tight, and it has a magnet, and it kept it all Velcro tight. So then people were just passing around like a 12-inch foam block, like a foam pit.
It was like a Nerf football.
Yeah.
But it was a microphone. And when they proposed this idea, I was like, they're going to be throwing around a lavalier mic. Basically, that sounds terrible. But as it shook out, one thing we learned was they should have educated what the point of it was before they started the show. Like had an MC to say, hey, here's what we have and how you use it. You talk into it, and it's basically like a kindergartner's talking stick. Like you don't ask questions unless you're holding your box. Once they kind of educated that fact, it was awesome. Like it was more like, I think it opened up people that are scared of microphones were more willing to talk into this pink foam block. And it was like more people got to participate. So I loved it. I would have two, I think, because it was a big space.
Dave, how'd you feel about it?
I agree with everything Dylan said. I think it would have worked a little better if they educated the audience on this is what this is, because still about half the people would ask questions without the microphone. And then I was the online broadcast guy, and people were like, we can't hear the questions. And here I am in the studio. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
And so, but did it work well? Yeah. And I assume you muted it when they threw it.
I missed a couple, but yes.
Yeah, I could kind of tell. So I think if you have a good sound guy and it's set up properly, and I assume that was one of our wireless units inside. Mm-hmm. So there, it worked. And we had a customer threaten to use one of those before, and I think we were like, no way. But I think in the future, I think it's a great idea, to be honest with you. It's just coming from like a audio background, you don't throw microphones across the room.
Yeah.
So you're breaking some fundamental rules here.
I didn't realize whenever it was called a catch box, they're actually throwing it.
Yeah, it's meant to be thrown. It's like literally meant to be thrown, but on the bottom there's a warning disclaimer that says don't throw at people's heads. It's okay. We were at a safety conference, so everyone was really safe.
But it was funny because when they were like explaining to the audience what to do with it, they were like, and then you just throw it across the room, and then you could see people were like, not super. So they like lightly chucked it on like a bucket train or bucket brigade where it would kind of move its way across the room.
It was fun. I thought it was fun.
Well, and like I said, a successful conference and stuff. So that ended at 3:00 on Thursday, and then at 4:00 on Thursday, we started the dress rehearsal for our second event of the week, which is the Women's Choir of Boulder, the Renaissance. It was the Resonance, the post-election concert at the First Methodist Church, which I can't believe holds 700 people.
I know, it's insane.
And it was sold out.
Yeah.
But this was one of my favorite events of the year is we didn't know what we were getting into, and we get to this Methodist church, and everybody was like, we're so glad you're here. And we were kind of like, yeah, we haven't done anything yet. Let's hope this all works. And so the rehearsal was just going along, and the choir starts singing For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield, which is not a choir song. And they were amazing.
Nice.
And at that moment, I was like, this is going to be amazing. And it was. So we came back Saturday. We because we had 3 events last weekend, we had to buy a bunch of equipment. We didn't have to, but we would have had to go buy and get Dylan's equipment at 3 and get it to the church by 4. And I was like, that's never going to work. So we got a new Black Magic ATEM switcher. And so what that is, if you don't know what a switcher is, allows us to push a button and change cameras. And we originally bought the wrong one. And fortunately, B&H Video let us return it and overnighted us a new one. And we got the right one. And it was pretty cool. We got new equipment, new tripods. And
I like those too.
We got really nice
small rig, right?
Small rig, which I've never had a bad deal from small rig.
Same.
But a $300 tripod is a disposable tripod, and these are not disposable tripods.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber, they're nice, lightweight. They have a good fluid head. Like it was easy to know which. Well, okay, wait a minute. Ryan High had to do a little bit of massaging on those fluids because they were not fluid. Like you could not get the left and right were not working. He had to loosen it
but read the instructions, and then they were great.
Yeah.
Great.
And then what else do we get? I think so a couple highlights about, so Dylan's show, and I don't know how it panned out this way, and we said we had the chat and we had the upvoting and stuff, and we did all that through Vimeo. And we don't get along with Vimeo. And that's not why we used a different company. We used a company called caster.io for the concert, and they built a paywall for us. So the customer sold tickets for $15 a piece, and she sold almost 400 tickets, which is amazing. So 700 people on site, just shy of 400 tickets being sold for the broadcast. So, and I'll be honest, like even when we broadcast Kona, nobody's paying for a ticket. Yes, people are paying a fortune to make it happen, but nobody's buying a ticket. And so we had this company Caster, and then sure enough, we go live like 15 minutes before the show, and we find out the hyperlink doesn't work. And Caster was there. They said, sorry, but we need to send out this new link. And then the show went great. We learned a lot about, we specialize in sports broadcasting, and doing a choir is not that. Mm-hmm. And so like one of the things that like surprised me is all our transitions are either a half a second. And this is what a transition's when you go from, camera A, which is a person, singing, to camera B, which is somebody playing the piano. And in sports, it's either no seconds or it's like a half a second. But in a choir concert, you want that to be like 3.5 seconds. So you get to see both the piano and the person for a little bit at the same time. And then even sometimes you want to stop it where it's showing both of them. And so it was one of the most fantastic learning experiences. But even more so, I can't emphasize how much it means when people show their appreciation that in the concert, they're like, we want to thank our live streaming company. And I'm like, I hope it's working. Because I'm there working. I don't get to watch it. Kate was at home watching it. And so we did
troubleshooting. Like shout out to Kate for working with Caster to make sure that all those people could watch it when there was a problem.
Well, yeah. And shout out to Kate for working with Caster to get the paywall built and to get the concert page and all this way more complex than we anticipated. But that's how you learn, is you get somebody like Sue, who was the customer, to take a chance on us. And then we built something that worked for her.
Yeah.
And so the concert was great, a great performance. We had 4 cameras. We were going to do them wireless, but we ended up doing them all cabled because we kind of flinched at the last minute. We're like, we took in camera stands. We did it right. I mean, we really did it right. I got a new MacBook the day before, and I got it set up in time. And it was
in a new switching software.
And it was my first time using OBS because, again, I kind of hinted to we had a little bit of a falling out with Vimeo, and so we were in flux whether we could use their software or not. We think we have it resolved, but I'll use OBS in the future is my guess. It really, for this, it was really simple. And then again, we used a live view backpack for internet to broadcast it to Caster. And then we had a page that was designed around the concert where the viewers went and watched. But probably the neatest thing that happened out of the whole concert, well, we met a lot of neat people who, it's what I love about Boulder, open-minded people and just good people. But the best part was our relationship with this company, Caster. At the end of the concert, they said, do you mind if we send a survey out to the people that bought tickets? And we said, well, let us ask our customer. And our customer is like, yeah, sure. And so Caster sent this survey out, and then they sent us a Google Doc where we could see as people filled it out. And I was surprised because I would give ourselves like a C+. And one of the people in the survey gave us a C+. But people were ecstatic about how it worked, how it sounded, how it was to work with. Like it was, and I wish we could do more surveys like that. I think part of when people buy a ticket lends itself to you have their email. It's not intrusive to send them a survey, but it was fascinating. And then Dylan had ChatGTP go through the survey and summarize it for us. And it was like you averaged, we had like 4.8 out of 5 and like 9.5 out of 10 on all of the stuff. And a lot of people they pointed out like the first hyperlink didn't work, but we had them a working hyperlink before the show started.
Yeah.
So all that stuff came up during the pre-show, which we just put up a slate and play some royalty-free music before the concert.
But one of the things I would say, too, about this that made this unique, and people, I feel like the reason Dylan's going to talk about the results here of the survey, but one of the unique items was that everybody obviously paid, so that's, different than a lot of what we do. But then on top of that, it was family members who wanted to see their person sing in the choir. They couldn't make it to the event, or they didn't buy tickets in time, or they live in another state, whatever their reason for not getting to be here. Most of the people had a vested interest in watching the concert. So they, I think we got a lot of the responses to the survey because people, they want next time they want it to be even better.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the customer and the audience and everybody had skin in the game. And that made it one of my favorite events of the year. And again, I wish I could say we did better than a C+. But I feel like there's no chance we'll ever do a C+ again because of learning. And one of the biggest learnings, and if you're in broadcasting, you're probably about to cancel your subscription to our podcast, is we don't have tally lights on the cameras we use. And we have to have tally lights. And what a tally light is I had 4 cameras to choose from. Dylan had 2 cameras. Melinda was up in the balcony with a camera, and Ryan was camera right. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, and they didn't know when I was choosing them. Now, Mel sitting up in the balcony actually could see what I was doing, and Dylan could see a little bit about what I was doing. And then the other thing is we did have comms, and that meant I could talk to these guys, but it's this really soulful choir singing and talking. In a church, talking was not okay. Yeah. So we couldn't really use our comms. Like if there was applause, I could like slip in some words like do this, do this, do this. But and we were located in the audience. So we weren't like at the back of house or something like that, or even the front of house. We were in the audience. And I don't think that was a bad spot. And it would have been a lot more work for us to be somewhere else, but there wasn't a good way to communicate.
You know what's interesting? That just made me think, because tally lights are would be so hard to execute in the field, the way that we usually operate. But I wonder if there would be a way that we could integrate into our comms where you could hit a button that's like camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. So it would say for you, because we often do things in quiet spaces, like press conferences and stuff, where you can't be like, hey, camera 2, stop being stupid, camera. Yeah. So like if there's like a button that's like camera 2, and you still wait for a second for them to set and know that you're coming to them. But I wonder if that would, obviously tally lights is, but also being able to do both of those things where they know how long they're on with the tally light, but you can't pre-warn them with the tally light. Like once that thing goes red, you're live, baby.
Oh, you kind of can though, because some of them operate where they're off, and then green means you're in the preview window. So get ready.
I've never seen a preview tally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be good.
So we did some research on tally lights, and the lowest hanging fruit wouldn't have worked for this job as Live View sells them to work with the backpacks.
Yeah.
And so that would work for a sporting event where you're out on motos or something like that. But we did one of our favorite hardware vendors, Hollyland, makes a wireless tally light system that we looked at that we're going to have to up our game with stuff like that. And then, of course, we went down the rabbit hole of maybe we should just look at new cameras. We're in love with Blackmagic these days. And
we got their Ursa broadcast in our B&H cart, like all loaded up.
Yeah, so
Like,
they make
cameras. Tally
full
lights.
on Ursas. All right.
They make cameras that not only have tally lights connected to the equipment we're already using, but I could just send the preview monitor back to them so they could see the multi-view. And one of the things that happened a lot is Ryan and Dylan showed the same person just from different angles. So then my 4 cameras is essentially 3 cameras at that point, because you're not going to just switch from a left headshot to a right headshot. But we learned a lot. We're going to figure out how to market to these kind of events, because we did good enough that I think that we have a knack. And then it felt good. And then the customer comes by like 2 days after the show to pay us in person. Mm-hmm. That's a nice touch.
That's a nice touch.
She's a class act, Sue.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Sue, when she was here, we did a postmortem, talked through the whole event, talked about how she felt and the feedback she had gotten. And then we talked a little bit about the survey results, but Dylan actually has the survey results. So maybe you can give us maybe you don't have to give us the whole thing, but maybe you could give us just a little bit of the feedback, because I thought it was cool. We don't normally do surveys.
Yeah, I thought my takeaway was, like Dave said, there's basically some categories that the survey made from Caster itself that was like overall quality of the concert, just overall. And then an ease of access and navigation of the platform itself. What about the satisfaction of the event and the performers? So looking at all aspects. And then likelihood of recommending the event and the platform. And I think, as a lot of surveys are, it kind of affirmed everything that we naturally knew, that Caster was, we might be the first ones to use this feature on their platform, and so they were very excited to, break the tracks with us, and they knocked it out of the park, and our customer knew that was the case, so that they were patient, and so it kind of affirmed things like the event was wonderful, the camera work and the audio work was wonderful, the platform was a little meh, and it was like, yeah, we know that's okay, that's not a bad thing, we know that, but we did learn a lot, and like I think you kind of already mentioned it too, that we lovingly kind of referred it to we learned it was like kid soccer. You're like, oh, okay. When we're live streaming kids playing soccer, their moms and aunts and uncles at home want to see their kid. It's not like, cool, is this the NFL package that I see on Sunday? No, they just want to see their kid. And so it was a big choir. I think we did our best in getting everyone's face, but I'm sure we missed someone. And it's super important, I think, for those audiences to see everyone.
But live and learn.
Live and learn. That's what we learned.
I would do anything to have another shot, as I assume we'll get, but to have another shot at that show. I was really excited as the switcher of how much better I could do. And I did make one pretty big mistake, and anybody that's done television switching has probably made this mistake, but in television there's a button on almost all consoles that's like, I quit. It's called fade to black. And
it's for the end of the show.
And it's for the end of the show. And I don't know why so many manufacturers put that right next to the button that's like, I don't want to end the show. And I hit the fade to black button, and it was probably black for like 5 seconds most. But there's that moment of what happened.
Yep.
And so fortunately, I'll give Blackmagic credit, not for putting it right next to the take button, but that it blinks red once you touch it.
Yeah.
So once I realized something was wrong, I looked over at the switcher and there was a blinking red light on the fade to black. So I hit it, and so I had Dylan edit that out of the post. So now there's like a blip in the show. Live and learn. That's a letter grade deduction right there for me. Ryan would have given himself 5 stars.
5-star AV.
So a successful week. And then Marcus, you guys wrapped up Arizona, an amazing race video that really showed the day. Made me wish I was there, although I'm glad I was home to do this concert. But great video. And then a woman sent a letter about you to BCC that, man, of all the thanks and appreciation letters we've gotten, which isn't a million, but we do get them here and there, this was probably the most heartfelt on how big of an impact she said you had on her day. What did you do? Like, because you must have seen her on race day.
Well, so here, I'll tell you the whole. So one thing that you always talk about, Dave, is stories will come to you. Like, yes, you can go out and find amazing stories. Absolutely. You can seek them out. You can ask on Facebook, but you got to be open to people walking up to you, asking you an innocuous question and going, there's something about this person. Yeah. I need more from this person. And I'm sitting in the tent behind the stage during an athlete briefing, and they're talking about the swim, and this woman comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I have a question. He just said that you can't wear gloves in the swim or you'll be disqualified, and I have a doctor's note. I might have to wear gloves because I don't know how." I can't remember what the name is, but something with nerves where if it's too cold, her hands could seize up. And she's like, "I have a doctor's note, but I need to know if I can do this." I was like, "It's okay. Just give me a second. Let me call and see if our head ref is here." And so I called Judy. Head ref isn't there yet. They had to switch head refs. Someone ended up not being available. So the head ref was coming in a little later than normal. So I was like, "Okay, come back tomorrow. We're going to have, she'll be here during this briefing. Come back tomorrow and I'll make sure you get with her and we'll talk through it. But you should be fine. If you have a doctor's note, you just need to connect with the head ref and you should be fine." And she's like, "Thank you," walks away. And the next day she comes back and is like, "Okay, I'm here to talk to her again." And so I just started chatting with her and I was like, "Yeah, so, why are you doing this?" And she's like, "I'm doing it for my mom. She's got Alzheimer's and she's just kind of going downhill. And when I did my first one, it was just after my dad had passed, and I did it for him. And so now this one I'm doing for my mom. I'm 64, my mom's 90, and I want to do it for her because she's such a huge impact on my life." And I was like, "Cool." I already had her bib number because I got it to give to Judy, and I didn't even tell this lady. I was just like, I'm talking to her in the morning and I'm getting more of her story. So I get her linked up with Judy and the head ref, and everything's, she's good to go. And so in the morning, I keep checking back at her rack, finally find her. And I run up to her and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" Put a camera in her face. And she like immediately hugs me and is like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And it's just like, okay, well, obviously, regardless of what she says now on camera, I'm following this woman all day. And she was just so nice and she was so excited. And she was talking about how excited she was to get to do it for her mom. And I found her after the swim, came up to me and she walked past her bike while she was talking to me, and she was just so excited again. Ed found her on the moto on the bike. We found her out on the run and got her finish, and she was just, and this is what she said in her follow-up email as well, is she was just so grateful that we would share her story. It just meant so much to her. And she was like, "And there's so much more that's gone on than what I talked about, but I just am so glad that I could even share a small part and maybe it'll help somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh.
It was one of the best letters or anything anybody's ever. She said you profoundly affected her day.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That makes me proud.
Me too, like not being at the events anymore. That used to be one of the things for me that was so important was we meet all these athletes and these are bucket list items for people like this is, someone's journey back from something or, just a personal challenge or whatever their why is. And then you get to be a part of it. And I don't get to do that anymore. And so reading that letter really I watched the video and then the letter came in later and it just gives you, I don't know, it gives you the warm fuzzies.
Yeah. And it lets me know, not being at the event, we're doing all the right things. So nice job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice job. So we're getting towards the end here. We got holidays, and it's going to kind of be a weird week because it's the holidays, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then you know where they don't celebrate Thanksgiving?
Australia.
In Australia, where our next broadcast is on Saturday. And so we have family in town, and it's like broadcast test, family, Thanksgiving dinner, broadcast test, and so it's going to be, but I will say this, my family won't go, why are you working? Like they get it. And then we're also working. So we're actually working all week.
Yeah.
We're also shooting a video on Thanksgiving Day at a turkey trot, which I'm really excited for that. Like our video productions are so big and bloated, and how many cameras can you carry? And this is like me and Ryan and a couple cameras and a drone and snow in the forecast.
Which would be sweet.
And then my whole family's like doing the race.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so just to give a plug in case anybody's local, it's the Community Food Share Louisville Turkey Trot 5K. And we're working so we do the Boulderthon locally, and the race director for Boulderthon is also the race director for the Turkey Trot. So another
David Benji's.
tie-in, yeah.
David Benji's, who's pretty much a legend in race production. If you do events, you've probably heard his name. And it's weird, small world. He's like one of my sister's neighbors out in Louisville. But
and I was going to suggest, if you wanted, because a bunch of us are going to be out in with the athletes, that I could take a GoPro or a 360 cam or something to just get the athlete perspective.
360 cam is a great idea because it captures everything.
Yeah, it does.
And
it needs to get some practice before we go skiing again.
Yes. And we did. This is the first day in my life I recorded 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
Because we did a How to Ski It, which is it's just about skiing, and it's about the same amount of meaningfulness. Except, I think I'm better at skiing than I am at AV, personally. I think if I was
just
as a podcaster, or like you're a better skier than an
I'm
AV
a better skier than I am a professional anything.
You know, it's unfortunate. I've been skiing for 4 years, and I think that's true for me as well.
Nice.
Well, I would like to say, the number of hours they say, you become proficient at something. You do have more hours skiing than
anything.
Except
sleep.
Like you have 54 years of skiing, and you only have...
This is for the other podcast.
20-something in... No. And you only have 20-something in the event world, so...
True. So a big week. So then Western Australia, and then we have 3 more events this year. We have Ironman 70.3 Indian Wells. We have Rock and Roll San Antonio. And then we have the Ironman 70.3 World Championships in Taupo, New Zealand. And Dylan and Ryan, hi. You're shaking your head, but we do.
Don't we also have 70.3 Florida?
Oh, yeah.
Man.
I thought you were saying no to Topa. I was like, what are you talking? Yeah, we have that.
Poor Ryan sitting here. That's the same weekend as Topa. So,
is it?
It doesn't extend the season. And then at this point, that's it for events. But one thing that's funny about events is not all event planners plan really well. And sometimes they call you and say, what are you doing next week? And we're not good at saying no. So, and then we have to... Once this season ends, and we'll talk more about this, we have to redo the studio.
Yeah.
Basically.
Basically.
For another podcast.
No, we got to redo the studio.
No, I mean, that topic is for another podcast.
Oh, yeah. That's for another podcast. I was like, we are not doing another
No.
podcast.
Hey, this is the studio podcast.
So that wraps it up for 500 million cats. You can follow us on Instagram. We have a website even that has a lot of the AI music that we've created called 500cats.com. Yes, can you believe that was still available? Facebook, Instagram. I don't think we're on YouTube yet. Our podcast is, but no video or anything like that. So follow, like, share, and if you've got something to say, if you know us, reach out to us and join us on the podcast. I think we will have a song. I have no idea what the song is going to be about, though.
Maybe Thanksgiving's coming up. Could we do something?
Thanksgiving's coming up, but I have to work.
Yes, that's it right there.
Here it is.
Lots of turkey, lots of worky. Feeling like a chef, ain't no time for jerky. Stuffing with the rhymes, gravy on the line. Plates piled high, it's a culinary climb. Working through the sun till the stars ignited. Hands beating drumsticks, feeling undivided.